Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, and I'm calling the Monday, February 26, 2024 Education Operations Committee meeting to order. I am seeking a motion to approve the minutes of January 22nd, 2024.
So moved. Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. With that, I would like to recognize speakers and students who wish to make a public comment at this point in time. Are there any speakers? Okay. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. Please identify yourself by name and state your address. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Ms. Peck will identify the time remaining up on the board. With that, I believe this is Ben Kaiser.
Yes, sir.
Have a seat, and the mic's already on for you.
Hello, thanks for letting me speak in front of you guys. I was just speaking on behalf of the Red Granite Charter School. I'm a local physician in town. I have an addiction medicine practice and then work in the hospital as well. And then also work with MCW in the residency program. So I have 3 little girls, 6, 3, and 3 months. And you know, I just see the first day my daughter went to school as a kindergartner, she came home with an iPad. And not to say that that's a terrible thing, but I can tell you firsthand that I see a lot of kids who become addicted to TikTok and Facebook, and we know when that happens, you know, now we have depression, anxiety, suicidality, these things that go through the roof. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at like the Waldorf philosophy, but once you see it, you're like, man, that's what I want for my kid. That's what I want. You know, where they're outside learning and there's no iPads and you take the technology away, and these kids do better, and there's less anxiety, there's less depression, there's less of these things that we see that's just really hurting our kids. You know, we can get into all the terrible things of the internet, and it's just like, man, how do we unhook from these things? And that Waldorf philosophy does that, and I just want to share with you just how excited I am for this to be an opportunity for my kids and for other kids in the community. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate it. Okay, at this time, Ms. Wohler and a list of people are going to be talking to us about the high school ELA curriculum. Instead of going through the whole list, I just figured bring the crew up.
Yes. Good evening, and thank you for having us here to talk about ELA sequencing in grades 9 and 12. So at our high schools, I am joined tonight by Jamie Waller, who is the department chair at Wausau East, and then Scott Curzine and Kim Elzinga, who will be the department chairs next year at Wausau West. With John Mawson's retirement, we thought we'd give him the night off. So, start with just a very quick overview of how we got where we are, the process that we began in bringing people together to look at our curriculum at the secondary level when we were looking at restructuring to be sure that we had the same course offerings at both schools, that sort of thing. As we've moved through this past year, We've changed a little bit of our approach and the direction that we were heading to really focus in on some of the parity questions now that we're going to keep both high schools as they are. So we changed, if you want to go ahead and move forward, we changed in September to really do our review of all of our courses, the discussion of alignment, and then as we have moved forward this school year, really looking at what our sequencing was going to be in both of the schools. So in November and December, our teachers came together and we're working with our standards review. And we did that in each separate building, looking at what was happening in both East and West, and ensuring our essential standards were going to be the same essential standards in our courses, and then again, making our decisions regarding parity questions. So the top color, the purple, is where we find parity in our courses with our naming conventions as well as our standards. The red is our courses that are unique to Wausau East, and blue are courses that are unique to Wausau West. So in 9th grade, we offer English 9 and English 9 enriched in both schools. In 10th grade, we will have English 10, English 10 enriched, and then we have an oral broadcasting course and a film as literature course that is offered at both schools. At Wausau East, Pub Lab is offered, and that is where the students work on yearbook and the Wahiskin, the school newspaper. At Wausau West, you'll notice that is taught in the business department. So it's the same course, it's just taught in two different departments. So just so we understand that it is in both places. And then at Wausau West, in the sophomore year, Intro to Creative Writing is offered. Then when you move into 11th and 12th grade, we get into more of our elective offerings. So the larger chunk at the top are the electives that are the same for juniors and seniors. And then we get into the space where we have some differences between East and West. So at Wausau East, we have Advanced Composition 2, Contemporary American Literature, and then our IB sequence. And at Wausau West, we offer British Literature, Writing Practice, and AP. So you might want to go back. The department chairs are here so that if there are questions about what is taught specifically in the courses and where the differences are, they will be able to really dial in and answer those questions for you.
Would you like questions right now, if that's the case? Board members?
Yeah, I've got a couple, Jim. So this looks like it matches exactly what was in place last fall from a parity standpoint in terms of this is your goal forward, right? What's at East and what's at West?
So there were some naming conventions that were significantly different.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, fundamentally, because I have, when we were talking about parity, I was trying to identify the differences, and it looks like the differences that existed last fall still exist today.
West created the enriched courses for E9 and E10. We didn't have those before. So we got in line with East. We both offer enriched for E9 and E10 now.
Okay.
And then at Wausau East, we did not offer oral broadcasting in the English department prior to this year, which we now have in the English department to kind of match West. And then we also only offered film as a junior, senior elective. And we're going to be moving that to a sophomore year as well to offer that same elective as Wausau West sophomore year.
And to balance things out, we moved speech up to the junior and senior level. We had it at a sophomore level, but to balance it out, we moved it out.
So help me with that, balancing it.
To create the parity between East and West. When kids can take the classes. The availability at what year?
Okay. So the real change then in parity was adding broadcasting to East and E9 enriched to West.
And 10 enriched.
And I'm sorry, and 10 enriched. So was there discussion about adding, when I look at the major differences, right? I mean, you have an advanced comp 2 at East. At West, there's advanced comp 1, but there is no subsequent AP comp. What discussion happened around offering an AP composition course?
Do you guys want to take that? Do you want me to?
The kids at West have the availability to take the test for AP comp or AP composition, but we don't offer it. And I'm not sure why we,
But how many kids would take a test if the class isn't offered?
do we have any that take it out of there? Right now, we currently do.
So do we know how many that is?
I don't know off the top of my head.
We can touch base with our AP teacher on numbers. The sequencing at West is because one single teacher is getting the kids ready for AP level style skills and college writing skills. And so,
But we have a different teacher, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a different teacher, right? Isn't it Mawson's and Galligan who are doing AP comp? I'm sorry, not AP comp, advanced comp. And then you have someone who does AP literature, because in the AP space, literature and comp are essentially hand in hand, but they're two separate courses. So why can't we get somebody to go to an AP comp level, is my question.
One of the things that I have had conversations with Shannon Galligan about is offering additional AP courses. What we really focused on in bringing you tonight was our current course offerings. And then if we're looking at adding additional courses, those will be discussions that will come before you in October when we bring forward new course offerings in general.
Okay.
There has been conversation. Shannon has suggested actually 2 different AP courses that she was interested in looking at, exploring, and trying to figure out which courses students would be most interested in.
I guess I want to be careful how I say this, but looking at what you guys came up with, I mean, this is great, but this is, in my opinion, what I had thought of in my head in terms of parity and advancement of courses and really offering kids, kind of state-of-the-art stuff. This is barely getting our toe wet.
This is really what we're looking at in many of our departments is that there's already quite a bit of alignment. So what we really focused in on in ELA is ensuring that we had the same naming conventions and that we're hitting the same essential standards. So some of what had happened in some of our junior, senior electives is that we had courses that had the same title, but we weren't necessarily hitting the same standards.
Okay.
So we want to be sure that we're cleaning that up. And then I agree with you as we move forward, what are some of the additional courses that we're going to be able to offer to kids on both sides of the river, but we wanted to start with getting our house in order as it was.
Okay, and I appreciate all that, and I think that's a great foundation. It's just like from an AP comp perspective, I've heard the discussion around that for years. It would be great if we could get some action going behind it and actually put some things in motion, even if it would mean retiring some of these other classes, so we could put more emphasis on some advanced stuff for students and really make them have the latest and greatest offerings. To me, that's like moving forward. And I appreciate your comments about aligning the standards and all that, but to a large extent, changing names and adding an E10 enriched and E9 enriched isn't a whole lot of change. And I guess maybe I'm just going back to the restructuring conversations. I was under the impression, at least conceptually, that there was these great differences in offerings, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are kind of confirming that there really isn't.
In some departments, we're very closely aligned.
That's good.
In other departments, we're a little further apart, but certainly in ELA, we were much closer together.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Question?
Just a question, kind of along the same path. If we look at like Intro to Creative Writing, for example, it's offered at West but not at East. Is there a reason why it wouldn't be offered at East? Is it a staff issue or an interest issue, or did that just develop naturally some way?
Yeah, I think at Wausau East, this is my 22nd year at Wausau East, and we've just never had an Intro to Creative Writing course. We've had one, and that has been enough to meet the needs of our students. We also, I think it's important to note, in my time at East, we have gone from, I think we had 13 English teachers when I started, and we're down to 8. And we still offer the same number of classes that we did when we had 13. So for us to add classes at Wausau East, people are already teaching a lot of different classes. So I think there is something with size of departments and staff numbers and the course offerings within that.
And it'd be interesting, and I'm sure you guys have already talked about it, but it'd be interesting to get feedback from West, because both schools offer creative writing. So, what's the West feedback on whether Intro, is it worth it? Does it make a big difference? Can you get away without it? Because depending on how those conversations go, maybe we need to add Intro to Creative Writing at East, or maybe we don't need it at West, and that could be focused on AP or something else. I don't know which is the right way, and maybe there isn't only one right way, but it would seem that with 2 schools in the same district, we'd be able to pick which is the right way for us.
And I forgot one other question too. So, what was the discussion around, like, East offers American literature, West offers Brit Lit? So why not the conversation, which one of those makes more sense for kids, and just offer the same course?
I can speak to that too. I think over time, those are the courses that kids have naturally gone to on either side of the river. Like when I started teaching at East, we did offer British literature.
Okay.
And it just kind of, for whatever reason, on the East side died out, and contemporary American Lit seemed to have more interest, where we would get course registration numbers and British Lit would have 8 students sign up for it or 4 students sign up for it, and contemporary American Lit would have 30 or 40 sign up for it. And I think at West it was probably the opposite. So it just naturally happened that there were a few differences in the courses that we offered.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to survey the kids and find out which one they would be more interested in before, and make a decision on what is the more popular one. If 30 kids were going to take American Lit and 10 were going to take Brit Lit, you may want to offer American Lit at both. I know the Brit Lit course was wonderful, but I don't know, maybe it goes the other way.
Well, that's also where, I don't know what our role is in this, but we obviously have a board interest in having parity between the 2 schools. But on the other hand, if one school, there's more kids that want this, and the other schools want, we say, well, no, this is the one you get. Do we do that? And we just say this is the one you get? Or do we offer them both? Because there's a difference between offering a course and having a course. We offer courses all the time that aren't filled. And I don't know what the answer is to that. At what point is parity so important that it overrides student choice? I don't
disagree. I'm just going back to the whole restructuring thing. That seemed to be the drumbeat, was parity this, parity that. But now if that's not the case, that's fantastic. I happen to think IB versus AP is a great balance. I think it's a uniqueness of the district that is a true advantage. So the restructuring conversation would have centered around the fact that we would have been able to support both classes. Potentially.
As opposed to only one or the other. But that probably starts taking us down a different path. So that's your time to kick me, Jim, and move on to something else.
As I'm sitting here going, yes, I understand all of this, I have some fun questions to ask you, because this is the department I spent so much time in, but it's probably more rhetorical than anything else. As I'm taking a look at Advanced 1 and then Advanced Comp 2, I'm just asking the questions, why we waited so long to just get rid of Advanced and just simply have, the AP Comp and then the AP Lit as what most schools usually do with the AP. I'll talk more to the AP than I will to the IB because I've been more affiliated with AP stuff. But usually that's the case, that you eliminate that course advance because now you're in the AP program and you can now get college credit by testing out and getting your 3, 4, 5 score and moving on, whereas the advance is just an advanced comp course being taught by the teacher. Now, the rhetorical part of that is maybe you haven't had the teachers certified for AP Comp and AP Lit throughout the years, and that's been the holdup. Correct?
I'm sure that's part of it, and I think advanced composition serves a much wider audience. Our numbers for advanced composition are huge.
Are they?
Because kids take it for any type of after-college writing they're going to do. So it serves a much greater audience. They can use the writing and not necessarily want the AP part of it. They wouldn't necessarily go to AP, but they would take advanced comp.
And that's why I said this is probably rhetorical, and I know the answer before you give it to me, but that does take care of a lot of students, the advanced program does. Because a lot of kids don't want to go through the course of AP or IB and then have to take the test, because I would imagine we mandate the test being taken once you've taken the course, or do we not do that?
No.
No, we don't. Okay. Well, that's another discussion somewhere else down the road, but
There's a big difference in focus though. Like IB English and AP Literature are very like literary analysis focused, where advanced composition is more college writing focused. So it's more expository writing, argumentative writing, research writing. It's a very different like student interest avenue than AP and IB are. So I do think they serve really different audiences of kids.
and I think that's very important for our board to hear that, because there is a difference in that, and we need to be able to see that and hear that from you, and greatly appreciate that.
But your point about what other schools are doing is a good one. I'm in college application land right now because of my daughter's age, and what Jim is saying is true, because you'll see the applicants from other schools and their 14 AP classes, and that's because the year that somebody at West took advanced comp at a different school, it was an AP class. And so again, there's that balance of the number of students wanting to take that versus us not giving the opportunity to some of our students that other schools give to theirs. And that makes a difference when you're applying to college or you're trying to save off of some credits from college.
What percentage of our high schoolers go on to a 4-year college?
How many start? How many end is another topic.
Yeah. I could find out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just curious because that's the kind of, I think, to parallel what you're saying, Lance, right? That's what we should be looking at, supporting 25-30% is a pretty big portion of the overall student body, so it would be great to have more offerings.
I do have one question about the publication lab at West in business. Do we give that equal as an English credit, or is that a business credit then?
They're elective credits.
At both schools.
Okay, so it's an elective credit, in that, which is something, again, we should be hearing so we understand that there are electives and then mandated type of courses. Okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, do you have anything else to add? No? Well, I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval to implement the proposed 912 ELA course sequence at the start of the 2025-2026 school year at both Wausau East and Wausau West high schools.
So moved.
Any further questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for being here and explaining some of those answers to the questions we have. All right, next up, as referendum projects for each facility reach the end of the design phase, 95% completion, the board will see the designs and budget and be asked to consider approval of these plans to be issued for bidding. Here, 95% complete designs are being shared for Wausau East High School, and the board is being asked to consider approval for use of soliciting competitive bids. And with that, turn it over.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Gould with Nexus, Senior Program Manager, overseeing the design phase for the referendum projects. So tonight, we're here to present East High School and go through the scope of work. Thanks. So with that, our purpose today is to present the design along with any design adjustments from the original referendum scope and ask for approval for the final design and a budget that we present, allowing the project to be issued for bidding. So here we have the original referendum website that we shared with the community, and I just want to point out again, like other projects, the main areas that we are focused on during design here. So we did look at a secure main entrance. Also here we had the private showers and some unisex changing rooms that were included in the referendum. We looked at remodeling the PE Fitness Center area. We looked at remodeling and adding a secure front entrance sequence with special ed to the EEA office and a theater storage building. Other areas included were some safety and maintenance items, which we'll touch on as we go through the presentation. Next. So the district involvement that we had 8 design meetings, which included the district leadership team, the design committee, building staff, and then we did break into 2 user group meetings for the EEA wave based on the timing of how we move through design. We did have attendance from other folks throughout these meetings. You had some of his staff attended, other things, people like that, just to keep the conversation going. So here we have the site work that we're looking at. You can see the existing site up in the upper left-hand corner. The base scope was to remove, with some adjustments, we're removing the asphalt scope to the northwest. We're redoing the drive to the east. We're doing some miscellaneous concrete work around the site. And we do have a couple parking lot alternatives that I'll talk about as we go through this. We did redo the asphalt for the parking lot, or for the pickup and drop off. And again, there's concrete work, repairs, things like that are included. And the other major piece of site work is the theater storage building, which since the last time we met, the location was determined to the east. So if you look on the drawing in the lower, or on the screenshot in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that little orange square, and that's where the theater storage building is going to go. And there will be some site work to adjust for that location. It is currently going into part of that parking lot that's over there. So going inside, I've shown here that we have renovated areas and updates, which includes equipment, ADA upgrades, things like that. There are no additions going on to this building, and just the miscellaneous work that's in the updates is doors and windows, maintenance areas, stage curtains in the black box theater, fire protection for a data closet, and again, the miscellaneous ADA grab bars. It's mostly just grab bars that are going throughout the building. Areas that was removed from the scope of renovations was the foods room and the graphics art room, because that was part of the restructuring. That's not part of the referendum, so those items have moved out. So this hasn't changed since the last time we all got together, so this is still the front rendering of the main entranceway with the secure entrance added. Again, I just want to point out, I think the architect did a really nice job blending it into the existing space, so it looks like it's always, it's always been there. It's not something that changes and interrupts the main sequence of the entry. So with that, moving inside to the main office, we did look at, you can see with the area in purple that a fairly large area of the space has been renovated. We have a new secure front entry sequence. We moved the principal's office, the assistant principal's office, the SRO is now close to the front entrance. The workroom, conference room, business office, and the mail room, based on a lot of feedback from Luke and his team, to be able to have the best flow going through there with the secure environments. Anything you want to add to that? Okay. So with this, we have the finished presentation of the materials. We just extended the existing building materials into the main office. Nothing really new or unusual. We are allowing for some space to add some branding, graphics, or things like that in the future. And then, again, it's just extension of the existing office finish package. All right, so this is the other main office that we renovated. So the EEA Wave front office, it's a full secured entry sequence now too. So the areas in purple are the areas that were renovated to make sure that that worked with the standards of the district. We, again, with the secure entry, we do meet with the district folks that oversee all of that, so it's consistent throughout. And for this, the EEA Wave space, we have a secure front entry sequence. We were able to have two desk areas for reception, a new principal's office, a conference room. We have some renovations to the workroom. We have a toilet room that we were added. And then the one thing that we did do is add some doors, passage doors, to be able to break off the EEA Wave wing from the rest of East. And another area that we focused on is that stair tower on the, I guess it's the plan northeast. You can see the bottom of the stairs there. We still allowed for passage coming from that stair for the East folks, students who need to get into the math labs on the other side of that floor plan.
I hate to ask a morbid question, but I'm going to anyway. With a lot of windows and a lot of glass in the front, talking about the front entrance and that, do we have a film that has been put on those windows, or are those bulletproof? I mean, the bulletproof, that's very expensive, but the film that has come out throughout the years works fairly well. Do we have film on that?
We have talked about film. Mainly they're going on the doors, right? If you want to back up a couple slides to the to this, like there would be film on all these doors going into the office area as well, just to contain.
Correct.
So it's the district, has a product that we've been applying to existing windows, and then any new windows coming in. They're not necessarily bulletproof. We did explore that.
But they're shatterproof,
But they're
probably.
shatterproof,
Yeah.
and meets the intent of what we talked about.
Another piece, excuse me, we talked about was the SRO having a direct line of sight out into the entryway. So we did decide that window in his office would be a one-way glass where he can see out, but the public, kids, parents cannot see in.
Good.
Another security piece that will really benefit, so.
Also useful if he has somebody in his office.
Correct.
And we don't need the public to see that for confidentiality.
Yeah, he'll have that on the window, and then on the door, he'll have shades. So if it is a private conversation that he needs to have, he'll have full privacy.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the interior finishes for the EEA Wave section. So interiors, we did try to pull in the school colors for both of those school areas. So we have the teal and the light blue, and then just some branding for that part of the building so that those students in that office has an identity. And then Luke had said with the other main office, that's something that he's going to work on with your
Yeah.
students, right?
So we have, as you walk into the main office, there's the lumberjack head with the mission and vision statement. That wall will be a blank slate, and we're partnering with kind of cross-curricular tech ed world, art world, our IB world, to develop a nice piece of art welcoming people to Wausau East that people will remember of when they walk in. It'll be hopefully the wow factor. So.
I think that's very important because schools, high schools, middle schools, whatever the level, it's important to identify what we're all about. A lot of pictures of students, a lot of pictures of things that are happening, and not so sterile. It looks like people, community members will say this because I've seen that and heard that in the past. It looks like a prison.
Yeah.
Well, we want it to be very receiving, so that's good to hear.
And cross-curricular, which would be real fun when, different departments are collaborating together, so it should be really cool.
So I just want to point out here, this fitness room, locker room scope area was removed from the project because there was actually a structural issue that led to a supervisory. If you look at the corridor on this bottom part of the floor plan, I can go way in the it's a shear wall, so it's hard to modify without a lot of expense going into it. And so we chose to move that, so there'll be some equipment that we'll do the swap for, but with the toilet rooms, the locker rooms, the change in the fitness area, the needs over the time, the district needs, or the school needs over time have changed, so there's shared space with the toilets and the lockers that are serving the needs now. And it was a better use of money to go apply it to, either the equipment or getting that SRO's office and the main front office to work. So there was a lot of discussion on that point. So, as far as trying to even out the scope of work, we also wanted to make sure that we were focusing our efforts on where they belonged. Next. So moving outside, this is the theater storage building. We did look at a couple different sites around the site just to see what would work. And based on the feedback from the theater department and others, this is going to be mainly where the scenes and maybe costumes and other areas are stored. It does have good access from the theater itself. There's an overhead door. It's just a quick walk out. And so it's easy transport. Doesn't need to hire trucks or anything else to get that equipment over to the new location. It'll help, disperse a little bit of the material that's being stored right now. And the parking lot that it's sitting on, I think we saved most of the stalls. We only lost, I think, 4 of the total parking stalls back there. So it really looks, I think the theater folks are pretty excited to have their storage come back. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, some of the discussion was for ease of use. The garage doors will be in line so they can build in the set building room in the building, but get material very easily to and from. I know that was really important. When we were looking at different sites, it went from kind of up by the entranceway, up by the tennis courts to really anywhere, and it made more sense to do it this way. So I think it's a win-win across the board.
So, so that's going to be right across from the main theater itself. So for mechanical and plumbing systems, this was pretty straightforward for all of those folks. There was actually no standalone scope of work for mechanical or plumbing. They did remodel the spaces to fit whatever the architect was doing. They adjusted the mechanical and plumbing. Again, we did add the fire protection for the data room, and we did provide gas and gas heat to the storage building. Next. So the electrical system summary, we did provide the power, lighting, telecom, fire alarm, and security as needed to the new secure entries and the renovated spaces. We're providing power and lighting to the theater storage building. And then just to confirm some areas also that came up during design is there was some non-functioning meters in the main distribution panels. That scope was removed because they weren't working and the need was not clearly articulated. Again, being thoughtful on how we're spending the referendum budgets and the ground fault protection for the light poles. Occasionally it trips breakers. We dug into that as well. And we'll probably adjust the ground fault breakers themselves so there's a little bit bigger of a range. But the poles, there's a different issue. It's more of a site issue versus an electrical issue. So at least the nuisance trips will be minimized safely. When we're talking ground faults, we want to emphasize that safety is also a concern with that too. Another piece of the removed scope is we did talk about the bell controller replacement, clock system replacement, and the PA all-call system replacement. I'm going to touch on that again shortly. And then we did modify the fire alarm system scope to accommodate the space changes with the existing system while we continue to explore potentially replacing the panels like the base referendum scope said. We did honor the feedback that we've gotten regarding those 2 items, and I do need to continue to touch on both of those shortly. Next. So with that, as previous meetings, to go through the alternates that we're including, we do have 2 site alternates. We have the asphalt work in the northeast parking lot and also some concrete work. The concrete work will be based on the budget that comes back on bid date to the extents. And then we also are looking at adding an exterior security camera. That's not necessarily part of the referendum scope, but with all the contractors that we have on site, it makes sense to do it through the referendum as opposed to a standalone security item in the future with the, through facilities. So, any questions on the alternates? Next.
Any follow-up? No?
All right, so here's the budget that we had. The original referendum budget was 5.998. And then the new budget that was re-estimated a couple months ago was $6,404,454. That actually was close enough to the original, that re-estimate that we did. I think 2 months went by. We estimated off the original 75% set. We tweaked it a little bit with an updated 75% set, and that was still within reason. And I just wanted to point out, I mentioned this earlier, that we're still finalizing some fire alarm work that we're looking at, because there was the budget that was included the head end panel that Ryan's looking through. And then the bell controller replacement clock system, PA system, I'll call, there are starting to be failures within the system. And so even though that was set aside, and I'll just use, we were looking, that was the analog version of the digital mass notification system. So there are some concerns that are starting to pop up very recently that were brought to our attention. So we wanted to just note that we're reserving a little bit of that project budget to look into both of those items to make sure that everything's finalized. And just, we do have a little bit of that, $496,000. It is included in the 95% design budget. But we're trying to be clear and transparent on what's going on with those items. So with that, okay. So I guess Josh.
Yeah.
Were there any questions on the east design budget? Cassie,
just
can
got
you go
two.
back one slide, please?
I don't know, I got two questions on some of the changes that were made for East.
For east, okay.
So you removed the foods and graphic arts work. Can you remind me, were those space driven because there was going to be more students, or is it functionality like to upgrade the facilities?
Those were driven by the restructuring. So,
But what was it a space issue, like you had to make them bigger after restructuring, or was it new functionality?
So like the foods, the foods area, right now we have one full kitchen.
Yep,
To accommodate going to an 8-9 building and the number of students that would increase.
okay,
We needed 2 full kitchens or 2 full classrooms with kitchens. So that was part of the discussion of, as that restructure didn't occur, we felt that we still could accommodate our needs at East with the 1 full kitchen for our family consumer science.
okay.
So
Is that the same for graphics?
in essence, yeah.
Okay. And then my only other question was, EEA is down to how many enrolled now? 30 something, I thought I heard.
They're around 33 to 35 students.
So, and I'm not suggesting this, I'm not trying to predict anything, but we know that interest in some of these schools ebbs and flows. We used to have EGL Academy, that went by the wayside. EEA has dropped significantly. If in the future, 5-10 years down the road, needs change to the point where EEA was not going to be an official school anymore, is there anything being done to East that would impede us from repurposing the EEA space right now? I mean, and I understand there's going to be signage and certain things like that, but is there anything functionally happening that's going to say, oh, that's really going to be a pain 5 years from now if we wanted to use it for some other purpose?
one more.
It might be pertinent for the board to at least be aware that we have relocated the WAVE program to the same space as EEA to better utilize those rooms.
Yep.
That doesn't answer your question, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
Yeah.
From a building perspective, the new front office is sitting in a new classroom. We didn't move any major walls or anything like that. There's some small remodeling within the spaces. But I would think it would be fine to return those, remodel them back into something else in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, and just
Thank
a little
you.
further along that line, we had talked about that possibility, thinking that, if other programs developed or other schools that to have a second secure entrance could be a benefit down the road either way.
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, perfect. Can we click through to the budget update? Thank you. So since we have a design bid, or a design budget, I wanted to give a brief update on the referendum budget in totality. So I highlighted the change under the design budget column. You see that East High School, that $6,404,000 number is exactly what the updated budget design budget estimate was, as Sharon said earlier. So just highlighted that. And then the other thing I wanted to note, a couple months ago, due to the relative increase of the cost of the Hawthorne Hills site work, I just want to remind you that number, the original number was that $1.9 million number. We got an updated estimate that was over $3 million. So the board chose to move away from that road that would have gone around Hawthorne Hills along with the parking lot expansion. So those numbers have been removed from this estimate. So I just wanted to update you on that. Where that brings us is to, I don't want to say over budget, but we're looking at basically a $2.6 million deficit that we're facing now. That number was closer to 5.6 the last time we looked at it. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
So with that, we recommend that the board moves forward to approve us sending out Wausau East High School out to bid and approve the plans as presented to be issued. Well, I guess I read this out right. Approve plan designs for Wausau East High School as presented to be issued for bidding.
So moved.
Second.
Any follow-up questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, agenda item number 6, as referendum-funded improvement plans developed for each facility, the board will see updates when the designs reach 50% completion. Current plans for Maine Elementary School will be shared with the board at this time. Informational, go ahead.
Excellent. I don't need to reintroduce myself, I don't think. So. All right, so our purpose again today is to review the design, how it's changed up to the 50%, and approve the direction to move forward. This is the third school in the 3-school elementary school package that we're putting together. The other 2 are Thomas Jefferson and G.D. Jones, and we'll be issuing all 3 of those together. So those 2 are waiting for this one to catch up based on the direction that we heard from the school board previously. So next. So with that, just to point out, there's not a lot of work here. It's pretty straightforward. The main area that we shared with the community was the secure front entrance, and there's a couple other security items and ADA items in the scope of work. Next. So we've had 4 design meetings to date, and then we did have a couple security meetings too, just to get the cameras and some other pieces correct as well. So with that, this is the new site plan. One of the areas that we talked about in the base scope of work is I'll start with the simple one, the fencing. We were enclosing the chiller with fencing. That work's been completed in the meantime. So that's work that we're not gonna be doing. And then that lane, if you look, that bright spot in the north, to the northeast of the building on the east end in the back, we're extending a fire department access lane. And the purpose of that is to deal with a code compliance issue to make sure that fire trucks can get all the way to the back of the building. Next. So with that, just again, no additions to this building. We have a couple renovations in that front office. We're touching with the student services a little bit. And then as far as updates go, we're looking at some cubbies, some grab bars. Maybe we're starting to evaluate any door hardware that needs to be changed to meet ADA. And we're updating the electric water coolers, the drinking fountains to also meet ADA. Pretty straightforward. We're, adding a door, getting a vestibule in, if you can see the front office there, and rearranging some doors. It's really straightforward. Next. So for mechanical, there's actually no HVAC work there at all. Plumbing, they'll be working through the ADA water coolers. We'll be dealing with some pipe wrap on certain sinks throughout the building, and that's it for mechanical and plumbing. And then electrical, we're gonna adjust whatever we need to get the secure front entry, power, lighting, telecom, fire alarm, security. We'll update the power to the bottle fillers and drinking fountains. We are adding a couple new cameras to help, enhance the camera system. And then we are updating the fire alarm system for remote access. Really straightforward, really simple. We're just getting this caught up with the other ones. We're sending this out to be field verified and estimated shortly. And then in a couple weeks, probably like a month, I'll be back with the 95% for this and the two other schools. Any questions?
No, I don't think so. Good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, agenda item number 7. Dr. Megan Hughes and Camille will share an update on the recent change of location at a Red Granite Charter School. So we're interested in hearing.
Okay, sounds good. I think I can probably control it from here. So our ultimate ask is that Red Granite Charter School respectfully requests support from the board to reside at Hewitt, Texas Elementary for 24-25 and the 25 and 26 school years. First, we'll just cover a brief enrollment update. We are currently at 85% capacity. That is without a known home. Our open enrollment is 24%, which I'm quite confident exceeds open enrollment rates of almost every school in the district. We have 61 applicants for 24 spots in pre-K. We have 30 applicants for 24 spots in kindergarten. The only grade that is not at capacity is second, and therefore the only grade that's holding us from hitting 100%. And the other thing I wanted to mention, because I know Mr. McKee was talking about college attendance and things like that. There was a survey conducted by the Research Institute of Waldorf Education that Waldorf graduates have a 98% rate of college or university postgraduate attendance. I know that you talked about supporting the 25 to 30% from other schools. So Waldorf puts out about 98%. A 2015 Stanford study of Waldorf schools found significantly higher positive student achievement outcomes on standardized tests. There was increased engagement, significantly lower disciplinary actions and truancy, and these results held across subsets of the African American population, Latinx population, and those with socioeconomic status disadvantages. In addition to that, the Waldorf pedagogy and Red Granite will practice restorative justice programs. Those show decreased suspension rates and decreased bullying and conflict.
Just one more piece on the enrollment. We do our lottery, so that takes place next week on March 5th. And so after that, we will continue to accept enrollment applications for any spots that we have available. So that would be for that second grade class. But we will know who has filled the spots for those 24 seats in pre-KK and first grade. All right, next. Oh, you can do it.
I can do it.
Okay. Keep on going. All right, so just a little review. So in early 2023, we signed our charter contract We got our grant for just under $2 million based on kind of what was written in that charter contract, because that accompanied our grant application. And the restructuring plan passed at that point, and that's when our plans to move forward being placed at Hewitt, Texas took place. Then now where we're at is the restructuring plans have been reversed in late November. And so that put us into a pretty quick turnaround to try and figure out a home for Red Granite. We approached you about the possibilities of being placed at Monk Gardens. So that decision was in December. And so since December, we have been working tirelessly to try and figure out if there's a way that we could make it work for Red Granite to be placed at Monk Gardens. And so we've come to the realization that that time frame is just incredibly tight to try and get done everything that we would need to get done to, in essence, build a brand new school from scratch, buildings and all, within that 8-month time frame. And so you can go on to the next one. And so just to give a little background of the work that we've been doing over the last 2 months. So we worked with REI, who is a design company, and these are some design plans of what it would look like for us to be placed on the 2 acres that were designated for our space at Monk Gardens. We would need, at minimum, 14 buildings. These are all individual classroom spaces. So 10 buildings would house our pre-K through 8th grade classrooms. There would be 2 buildings that were designated for art spaces, music, practical arts, things like that, an office building, and a bathroom facility. So just to, make it clear for everyone, Monk Gardens does not have enough bathroom facilities to accommodate our students, nor any buildings at all to accommodate our students. So we would be, literally, it's just a blank 2 acres of what they have used for overflow parking. And so included in that design not only is the need for us to put in classroom spaces, but also drainage, water encampment and catchment, and all of them, bringing in electricity, bringing in plumbing, right? So all of the things necessary for a school to exist. So we've been initially the first plan that we brought to you included reutilizing shipping containers. That was very quickly shot down by the city. They have very strict codes on what the exterior building material can be, and metal is not in one of the approved materials. So we looked at covering the outside with wood, and the cost just ended up going through the roof. It didn't make sense for us to try to go down that route. And so we realized that we would need to do more traditional buildings for it to be approved by the city. So the scope of approval by the city is a pretty long process, and we found that with all the many conversations that we've been having with them. And so that's part of the reason that we're coming to you today. We're also worked with Function, the architect, to help us look at the plans that we had, which were actual plans that had been utilized for classroom space previously, and trying to save money. We knew that that the state had already approved this classroom design, so trying to keep that down, but we had to have it looked at by an architect to then be able to take it to the state. And then we were working with Heartland Custom Homes and Drexel Builders as the 2 companies that would help build much of the buildings in all the wall structures within a warehouse, so that then they could be brought on site and very quickly put together, knowing that we had this very brief time frame of most likely when we were going to be able to actually do the building of the buildings. Now in year 1, we only intended to put up 4 buildings. So we really had this design that you see in front of you as a 3-phase design. 4 buildings in year 1, 6 buildings in year 2, including the bathroom and office facility. So in year 1, we wouldn't have had an office, and we would have brought in portable restrooms. And then in year 3, we would have added those 4 additional classroom spaces, and that kind of worked with our growth plan of students as well. You can move on to the next one.
Can I just comment too, one of the other things that we ran into was realizing that the 2-acre space itself was just going to be extraordinarily tight for the school's ultimate footprint. So these buildings, I think they're...
Yeah, if you can move on to the next one, it kind of shows that footprint.
Yeah.
There we go.
So there was, what we realized is that to fit on those 2 acres, those buildings could only be 10 feet apart. And then there's fire code rules stating that essentially if they're not 20 feet apart, then the building has to be
An
specifically.
additional firewall would have to be put into every building. And so you can see here too, because this is its own property, we had to do setbacks from each of the property lines. You can also see here where we would put in a driveway, have parking that would be designated for the school, and then that would be where the bus dropped off and would drive around and go out. A kind of path through the middle led to our students' access to Monk Gardens. So beautiful site plan, but fairly complex, and the time frame, again, if we had all of the design ready to go to the city by tomorrow, best estimation, if everything went perfectly, the soonest they could approve the site design is the middle of May 15th. And so that then to have the builders lined up and ready to go, we can't really do that until we know for sure that we can implement the design. And so between May 15th and opening in September 1st, that time frame is just, we feel unattainable. You can go to the next one. So this just then kind of moves into our conversation of cost as well. So we began the process of fundraising for this capital campaign and started approaching donors and large foundations as well. We've had multiple meetings with foundations, all incredibly well received, but for most of them, their boards don't even meet for 2 months from now. So even if it's well received, they wouldn't see it for 2 months, and then most likely would have to think on it before any designation of funds would be able to come to us. So another just reason we're like, the ability to do it within the time frame that we had was just incredibly tight. Our initial estimation for the project was around $2 million. After continued conversations with builders, we are realizing that it probably would be closer to between $3 and $5 million for the project in total. We do believe that we could raise that much money, but it would take us years, not months. And so all of these things bring us to you today. Okay, so our thoughts on transition back to our initial location for our first year of operation, which would be a shared space with Hewitt, Texas. There are currently 3 classroom spaces that could potentially be used for Red Granite within the Hewitt, Texas building. So we'd be utilizing existing underutilized space within the building. We would put up a yurt for our 4th classroom space for year 2, and then a second yurt for year 3. So the additional reasoning why we believe this would be really helpful for the school, especially in these foundational years, is we would have a lot of shared capacities. So busing, special education, custodial services, and food services, these are all things that were going to be more challenging for us to accomplish at Monk Gardens, and are going to be much less challenging for us to accomplish if we have a shared space with an existing elementary school. We know that the optics are challenging for us in the multiple switches of locations for potential students that are coming to our school, and just for assurance to our new families that we are going to be able to provide a space. And so that's why we're asking for a 2-year commitment to this shared location, just so we can give some understanding and commitment to our families that we have a place to be for at least 2 years while we work with you to develop a long-term home for Red Granite moving into the future. We know that this school, we've demonstrated that the community very much wants this style of education. We have, lots of families that want to send their students to this school, but we need a home for the school, and that's why we're coming to you for your support and helping decide where our school's home is going to be, at least for the next 2 years. And then we can continue the collaborative work to determine the long-term home for Red Granite.
And also as part of the expanding to the second year, instead of opening from this third grade through sixth grade. In the second year, we would only open to third grade, because obviously opening 4 more grades would not be a feasible or logical option under this current, what we're looking to.
And
to
part of
achieve.
the reason that we had initially developed that expansion for the school was because we were in a shared space for year 1, but then expanding into the full building for year 2. So it made sense to go from 4 grades to 8 grades. We are no longer in that position. And so a slower expansion makes more sense for the school, especially in the shared space potential. We also know that an incredibly important piece of this decision is the collaborative work between the future of Red Granite and Hewitt, Texas Elementary School. So that would be collaborating with the staff and the families to make sure there's a cohesion in that shared space. You know, shared professional development, opportunities for those collaborative efforts between the existing students and the new students that will be in that space. And we know there's some hurdles there, and we're excited to overcome those hurdles. Next. So, yeah. And so, yep. Questions?
Let's open it up to the board.
Yep.
Questions from the board?
I just got 2 quick ones. Is there anybody from the district administration that sits on your board, your governance board?
We can't have anybody on our board that is paid in any capacity, but our board meetings are open for anyone to attend and participate in. But because we're receiving federal grant funds, we can't have any board members that receive any payment from the district or our school, if that makes sense. We can have people participate and come to the meetings, but they can't be voting board members.
Dr. Caldwell is our liaison, and so has an invite to all of our board meetings, a standing invite. As Camille said, you can't be employed by Wausau or Red Granite and serve on the board.
Okay, but Katie is connected to you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have meetings very regularly, especially now, weekly.
And this is very common in charter schools, in
Yeah.
districts and that.
Yep.
Yeah, so often districts might even have a liaison board member that would attend our meetings and be that conduit of information, but they can't be a voting member, but they can be a, assigned liaison to the board.
That's
Okay.
sort of what Dr. Caldwell is like the liaison.
And my only other question is, does Diana White approve the timing and content of all your external communications, being that you are part of our district?
No, but we work closely and will work even more closely with her to make sure that any sort of outreach and publications are.
So can we make that an official requirement that before anything goes out, that Diana has blessed it, again, both for timing and content?
I think that's a very possible agreement that can be done between the 2 boards, the controlling board and us being the controlling board of the whole shot.
But if I find out about these things again by complaints from people at Hewitt, Texas, it's not going to go well for anyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure I know other board members feel the same. So I guess I'm not asking, I'm requesting that you guys commit to saying, hey, we're going to work with your communications because we are part of your district before we send anything out.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. We've got an understanding of how communication is going to go moving forward.
Yep. It was an error on our part, so thank you for pointing that out.
I have not a question, but a comment. I know the location has been frustrating, but even with that uncertainty, you've got 3 full classes. And the one that isn't full is your oldest one, which is understandable. So you can, it's pretty encouraging that next year you'd probably have 4 full classes because the 3 will fill forward and then the other one. And I hope board members saw 24 or 23 open enrolled students.
23%.
23% open enrolled. So that's real money. That's funding for us. And then the one that's hard to measure is there's probably students that are considered Wausau School District students that we prevent from open enrolling out because we're giving them an option that is different than the traditional classroom. So I just know it's been a frustrating process, but despite that, you're still off to a really good start. You've got 3 full classes. You've got a lottery system. I mean, it's it's encouraging.
And we do have students, I mean, at this point, we have students coming from Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids, Weston, Cronin-Wetter. We have at least one family moving from Minneapolis for the school itself. We have, we've got people coming a long ways. Merrill, like any neighboring city or, county, we have a family coming from there, if not more than one. And we have families moving from distant places in order to have access to the school.
And if I could add, it's typical particularly in a new school, a charter school, that the terminal grade level doesn't fill up just because you don't have that certain future path. So this is an excellent evidence in terms of the enrollment.
And we're just single tracked, so that means all of those rising classes will maintain the students that are initially enrolled. So, we'll only be accepting enrollment if we have attrition in any of those classes, and we'll have very significant waiting lists for all of them other than that.
I mean, we anticipate the only real lottery will occur at pre-K because the rest of the classes will be filled with rising students.
Ms. Hughes, did I hear you correctly? Did you say 98%
Yeah.
of the kids go on to college?
Yep.
I sure as heck hope you're going to offer an advanced comp course in 8th grade.
Well, it doesn't look like that.
You're going to need a lot more enrollment there.
We don't have a high school.
A little tongue-in-cheek there.
No, not.
I have a question. As far as the shared resources,
Yeah.
from my understanding, with the original plan, kids were going to pack their lunches.
Only at Monk Gardens, and that was because there wasn't food service. In our original plan, when it was a shared space, our kids would eat, I think we had it prior to when the elementary students at Hewitt, Texas eat, but they will eat in the lunchroom, just like the Hewitt, Texas students will eat in the lunchroom.
It would just be like cycled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the shared resources, is that also sharing the expense for those resources?
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
Because our operational budget is the same as any other school in the district, meaning the tax dollars feed into supporting all of those services.
And what does SPED stand for?
Special education.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That was my only question about the shared resources. And well, I did want to know what the 3 classrooms that would be used, what are they used for now? Do you guys know what they're used for now at the school?
Yeah, one.
Mrs. Channel is the principal there and at Montessori, and she's been working collaboratively with us. It could be, an art space that maybe is only used, 2 or 3 days a week. That could be combined with something else. I'm not sure exactly what the spaces are, but we're working on that.
That would be just my only concern is what is going to happen with whatever is taking place in those 3 classrooms now for the students that we have at Hewitt, Texas. And the yurt, is that, as far as safety with city and codes and all that, is that something that would?
Yep, it's used by multiple schools across the state of Wisconsin.
They're very common.
That's an advantage, is it's already an approved educational facility by the state, so, yeah.
Thank
Monk
you.
Gardens has 3. Our sister school, TRCCS, has 2. So,
And there's a couple other outdoor education schools, like the pictures that were shown are another one down by Milwaukee that uses them. But it'll have a wheelchair ramp, it'll be accessible, it's over 800 square feet, so it's a nice size for a school, yeah.
And with Hewitt being out of the city limits, you get away from some of the other restrictions.
It will not be under the same scrutiny as being inside the city limits.
Bring back your metal siding if you'd like, right?
yeah.
That's a good topic for the future.
That ship might have sailed at this point as well.
Very good topic. I have one question as I'm looking at the numbers here, and it should be just very quick. It looks like we have 130 applicants at this point in time. What's the capacity that we're going to be at? I may have missed that.
Yeah, so it's 90.
Because you're in a lottery, you're going to be in a lottery with 130, and so consequently, what can you hold?
We can hold 94, so 24 per, so 96. Oh, my math is
96.
escaping me. 96, sorry.
96, okay.
So like 2nd grade won't have a lottery as it stands, and then all the others will.
Right, it looks like that.
So can I?
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, I am still very excited about this model, for sure, and clearly the interest is there. So I'm really excited about that too, with having no location that you're literally like very few spots left. So I think that's exciting. A couple questions though. Is Monk Gardens then, it sounds like, ruled out because of the way the 2 acres, spacing, et cetera? Like, are you gonna continue down that path? Do you just don't have enough time?
So
Or,
we met with our board last week, Thursday, because of course we needed their permission to come to you guys. And we had a discussion kind of about, in our board meeting, about what our future options were. We were gonna potentially present them tonight, and we just decided that it was just too much. I think Monk Gardens is on that list. There are other options that I think our board considers to be better options on that list. But Monk is still possible.
And I think that we're hoping at a future board meeting, our board will have some more time to kind of pull together what we maybe see as some of those options, obviously in collaboration with the district, and we would bring those to you for input and kind of direction. I mean, ultimately, we're gonna take our direction from you as to where our school should be. But
we thought tonight was
we are a school in your district, and we need a home. And so we will, collaboratively support in any way that we can to bring ideas and costs and raise money and all of the things necessary for the school to have a home. But yes, I wouldn't say it's off the table completely, but it's definitely not feasible in the next right now.
And I think it's important to say that like our relationship with Monk remains very positive. We still plan on doing shared program development where we plan on utilizing some of Monk's educators to educate our educators and environmental ed. So by no means is that relationship been made more difficult. They're very understanding of what's happening. And certainly our board is excited for the opportunity to present some other options. We didn't want to overwhelm people tonight, and we also wanted to focus on getting this piece answered. That is part of why the 2-year request is. It just gives us more time to really get direction from you guys and then go flesh out what that means in a really pragmatic way that isn't under a lot of duress with time and money.
and I ask that only because I appreciate you absolutely do need like a 2-year sort of, we need to be able to tell them something.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, I was trying to figure out, are you thinking, no, actually this will probably be our long-term best case scenario, and then, because we're obviously simultaneously having another conversation.
And we purposely timed it,
right.
We're aware of the timeline that's going on with your board behind the scenes with the evaluation or the consultancy.
Right.
And we know that you guys are, thinking that those results will come back sometime. And
sure.
Another part that felt hard and complicated about Monk Gardens is the idea of having a school not on a site that's owned by the district. It just brought up so many unexpected complications that we weren't realizing when we initially entered into the idea. When you have a school on a site that you own, it's a whole different thing than trying to build buildings on a site that you don't own. We approached banks and lending companies. No one's going to give us any money to build something on a site that we don't own. The complications were just like every day we came upon a new one, and we are all stressed.
So my last question was, we just had that information at our previous meeting about capacity over under. And as I recall, I looked back up while we were, preparing for this, that Hewitt, Texas was at 87 at that, third Friday number, which was 70% capacity. When we add another potentially 96, currently 82, and not all in the building, because it sounds like some will be in a yurt. What does that do to that building capacity? Obviously, we want it to be filled to that 90% level.
Yeah, this would fill it essentially, and then we'd use the yurt, the 1 and 2 yurts as overflows.
Okay.
And I think certainly our thought had been that the yurt would house one of the full classes, so probably first grade, because the pre-K and K, we'd want to keep close to the bathrooms and with rooms with sinks and water. And then second grade is just small enough where like putting them in a huge yurt just doesn't make, so we were already thinking about, which class would take that space. It seems like first would probably make the most sense.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we had a surprise from a third entity that stepped in that really gave us a problem with not being able to use containers. So let it be known that that is something that has been a big bump in the road, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So as we go with that, but I think what I'm hearing from the board is that we definitely want to hear plans for the future. This will take care of us for the next couple of years, but we definitely need to have specific plans down the road. This will give you some time to do that.
Yep, that's exactly how we feel.
I don't know if your board if this is one of them on the list, but since you guys brought this forward, the natural place that my head always went to was the school forest.
Yeah. Yep, that's on our list.
Okay. I don't know why, but it just,
Well, that was our
lovely place.
That was our first.
Yeah,
when we first started, that was actually.
just seem complementary of one another.
Yep.
In a lot of ways, so maybe there's something that can be worked out there.
Yeah, it's
Probably your
right
number
at the
one
top of
plan,
the
isn't
list.
it?
What?
Probably your number one plan.
It's close.
Right, we won't go down that road. but-
Our board hasn't given us direction on.
Correct. You
where
take
to
care
go.
of that first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors to
A
consider.
lot of
Yeah,
things coming
yeah.
up. So with that, I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of Red Granite to reside at Hewitt, Texas Elementary for the 2024-25 and 25-26 school years.
So moved. Second.
Any further questions? Not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for all that
We
information.
appreciate it.
All right, the board will be presented with a 5-year fiscal forecast model for the district. The projection model will continue to be applied during the next 3 months to aid in constructing the 2024-25 budget conciliation plan and ultimately the 24-25 budget. It is critical to understand that the projections are the result of many variables and independently change periodically. As significant changes to the projections occur, administration will bring those to the attention of the board. With that, Josh, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. So I will ask Cassie to scroll through this. And if you don't mind, we'll go to the general fund, both history and projections. So scrolling down a little bit more. If I click through it, it's impossible to read. So perfect. Thank you. So this is the history of our general fund. So what you have is over the last 5 years, what were our revenues, expenses, and then corresponding surplus, deficit, and what that did to our fund balance. So could you scroll down so just a little bit more so we can see the charts there? Thank you so much. So if you can see, what we had on the left is the individual years in terms of what, if we had a surplus or a deficit. And then on the bottom right, the kind of totality of our fund balance. So over the last couple of years, up to fiscal year 22, that increasing fund balance, and then last year, fiscal year 23, that number near the top of your screen, that $983,000, that was a deficit. So our fund balance actually went down by almost $1 million last year. And in the baby blue there on the right, you can see the budget amount that is factored in for this year. So I think that's $716,000 deficit that was adopted by the board. Now, for the last couple of years, up until last year, you've adopted a deficit budget, and in the end, we've ended up with a budget surplus. So that money's moved into the fund balance. And last year, we did not have that. You had adopted a bit of a deficit budget, and then we ended with a deficit budget. And this year, we're projecting the same thing. I want to point out here that the number that you have there for the deficit budget for this year is $716,000. That was what was adopted. We have skyrocketing health insurance costs. I think our current run rate's something like 131%. So there's a chance that number for the deficit could be closer to $2 million, something like that. So just something to keep in mind. And then if we could scroll down to the next page. This is what we are projecting going forward in the general fund specifically. We're going to focus on that for the most part tonight. That's our main operating fund. So you can see the budget again for this year, about $117 million in revenue, $118 million in expense budgeted for that $716,000 deficit number. So beginning fund balance, $32 million, $288,000, ending fund balance, $31,572,000. So when we look forward at next year and then in subsequent years, it's important to know that these deficits carry over. So if we don't address it in the year it occurs, if you have a $2 million deficit this year and you don't address it, you have whatever you have next year plus that $2 million. It's a nice way to think about it. So when we're looking at fiscal year 25, so 24, 25 next year, we're looking at a total deficit number of, and we'll go back up in a minute and look at the assumptions, but we're looking at that total deficit number of almost 2.3 million, and with next year's number specifically at that 1.546 number. So that's just the 2.2 is the 1.5 and the 700,000 put together. Just so when you're looking at that, and if you have any questions, that number assumes that $1.2 million of ESSER funded positions that were specifically as a response to COVID will not continue past this year. So if you're looking at that roughly 2.3 number and the 1.2 number, we're looking at a total for next year of $3.5 million deficit. And then, as I said earlier, if we choose not to address that this year, that would roll into an additional $884,000 for the following year, for a total for that year of $3.1 million. And so you just can kind of see the flow through here of we're starting today with that $32 million in fund balance, very healthy. I think the recommendation is over 25% fund balance keeps us from short-term borrowing. And if we do nothing to do a budget reconciliation, which of course we will, in 5 years we'd be looking at that $17 million fund balance number. So as we're having all these other conversations about salary increases and capital projects, it's good to always keep this in the back of your mind. Where are we from a fiscal health standpoint for the district? Any questions?
Yeah, just a question as you extrapolate it out, and maybe it's in the numbers. Are you assuming no increased funding from the state when you're, we know our current budget, the 2-year rolling budget, but yep. Are you assuming there's no increase after that, or what assumption do you have for increased funding?
Great question. And we will roll back up to the top, but I think we did that $325 number all the way through.
Okay.
So no change.
No, $325 per year per pupil going forward. We also did assume flat revenue, and then we did assume that we would pay the same amount out of Fund 39. And we know that that will probably not be the case, but those are the assumptions we made to come up with this projection. Mm-hmm. Any other questions on this before we go up and review those assumptions? It's always good news. I always come to you guys with good news. Perfect, right there. So we brought this to you in January and got some feedback from the board and just wanted to review what we're factoring for right now. Looking at those 3% salary increases across the board, that's what we have penciled in right now. I think the CPI for negotiation was set at 4.12. So inflation has fallen significantly from where we were last year. But that doesn't mean things are getting cheaper. It means they're getting expensive more slowly. So something to keep in mind. That 24 retirement number, that's the number that we know we have for this year. And then we figured on 20 going forward. Below that, you have the benefit assumptions. It's the exact same as what we looked at before. And then except for the health insurance percent increase, we move that up to 4. in response to what we're currently experiencing. Now, we still do have some time in this year. Things could get better, but that's what we're looking at for next year.
A question on the retirement FTEs per year. If we have 24 this year, and I don't know what we had last year, is there a reason why we only assume 20? Is 24 higher than average? Where does 20 come from?
I think that 24 is Tabitha, do you? Thank you.
Higher than
Okay.
we had
Okay.
in the last 4 or 5 years.
Any other questions on this? Okay. We scroll down. So for a ton of these things, 300 and up, we assumed no changes in purchasing, essentially. Utilities, obviously, we did factor in some change going forward, some increase. Transportation assumptions, we have that 2.5% number for next year. We did move it up to 10% the following year and then moved it back to 2.5% in subsequent years. If we move that number to, let's say, 5% in 26, 27, it's about $80,000 a year is a good way to think about it. So 80,000 the first year, and then that would increase, of course, because it's a 5% the next year. You can keep scrolling down. So none of this changed from what we looked at the last time. Cassie, you can keep scrolling down. Yep, so that's what we have for the assumptions. And then again, focusing mostly on the general fund. We already looked at this, but this is the history. And then the fund balance, and then the projection going forward. We covered that. So that pretty much ties up the general fund. Are there any questions on that? Okay, if we could move forward, I think the next one is Fund 27. Keep going down. Perfect. So this is just our historic revenue and expenditures for our Fund 27. That's our special education fund. I think it's important to note that in large part, this is funded through a transfer from Fund 10, so from the operating fund. And it's also important to acknowledge that this year is the first year of the increased reimbursement rate up to 33%. So we factored that in going forward. So Cassie, if you want to scroll down to the next slide. So this is that looking forward number. The one thing I wanted to call out to you, actually two things. If you look at next year compared to this year for state sources, you see about an $800,000 increase. That's us budgeting in that 33%. Looks like we budgeted a little low. We're getting a little more than we thought this year. So that's increased there. And then you'll see a big decrease in federal sources. So that is part of ESSER going away next year. Any questions on that? Okay. We can keep scrolling through this, go to Fund 38. Fund 38 is non-referendum debt service. So long before my time, we did some energy efficiency projects that we are paying off, and we can levy for those and then pay them back dollar for dollar. We have that for 2 or 3 more years, and then that will fall off. So we can go to the next slide so they can see that. Thank you so much. Any questions on that? That will end here in a couple of years. And then we can scroll down to Fund 39. So this is our referendum approved debt service. So this is where we've been attempting to save people money in the long term by paying off debt early. So this is where that debt defeasance strategy comes in. That's also a really nice way. It's a tool that we have to help manage the mill rate. So hopefully we eliminate those spikes and valleys that people don't like to see. Any questions on the referendum debt service? Okay, could we just go back up to the general fund? So I think it's slide 6. We tried clicking through before the meeting and it wasn't legible to anyone. So right there is perfect. So a couple things I just wanted to mention or reiterate. We do have the end of ESSER funding this year. So this is the last year that we really can spend it. So that's something that is making this difficult going forward. And I guess we can spend a little bit through September of next year, but it's almost nothing. So that makes this hard. We have the rising health insurance cost. It was, both great that last year we did 5% salary increases, but that was significantly more than our revenue increased. So this is definitely something that we will come back to with a budget reconciliation plan and a way through this, and it probably looks kind of like this every year at this time. But I did want to give you an update and a snapshot of where we sit. Any questions on this?
Just a comment, Josh, your comment about health insurance at 131%.
Yep.
The district is not an anomaly in that is industry-wide across the country right now. So just so nobody walks out of here watching or whatever thinking, oh my God, what's going on in the district?
Yep.
It's happening to every business out there right now. So
thank you for pointing that out. I think it's important for people to have that context. So thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for getting us up to speed. Greatly appreciate that. At this time, we have the agenda 9 talking about Neola. Do you want to walk us through that quickly?
Yes, for sure.
I don't know how quickly we want to get through this, but
I think what we've been doing is Cassie can pull up the list of the policies, and essentially we just pause at each one and see if there are questions or suggestions. I would point out at the top that Neola overview, if you maybe didn't look at that, might recommend you do so. It goes through each policy and explains what the change is and some of the background. So really helpful if you've got some time to look at that. Otherwise, I'll just go through each one. I know we're going to take a peek at 144.3, but I'll just start at the top. And so if anybody has any questions or anything you want to review, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll just keep going. So we'll start with 142.1 and the electoral process. I'm going to go fairly quickly. Seeing none, we'll go to, if I can read this, 143.1, public expression of board members. And then let's pause at 144.3. Lance, did you want to talk to that one, or did you want me to?
Yeah, I can do this on. I reached out ahead of time just because this one addresses not only conflict of interest, but it also addresses board member volunteering. It says to reference 8120, which then says to reference 8110, which is our policy that used to talk about board members volunteering and making sure it's not regular, that it's rare, that kind of thing. But we don't have 8110 now.
Right.
So we've got to fix that up so that we're, and I mentioned to Keith, I'm not suggesting we have to bring back all of 8110 because it had a lot of other stuff in it too, but we should address that in some way in this.
Yeah, and maybe what we were thinking was, first, we want to make sure that the board is still in agreement that in terms of volunteering, we would want to avoid that regular kind of volunteering. Lance had pulled up some previous legal opinions, and from WASB and our attorney, they talk about how, let's say a board member wanted to, volunteer in a single school every week. It just, it gives the perception of favoritism, right? And puts pressure on staff and principals. So at that time, it was agreed that we would recommend that the board just do intermittent, like for instance, this Friday is Read Across America. If you want to read Across America, absolutely. If there's some event that a board member wants to volunteer at, that's allowable. We're just trying to avoid that regular specialized kinds of volunteering. So if the board's in favor of that, continuing that practice, what we could do is we'd go back to 8120, just take the language that used to be in 8110, insert it in 8120, and bring that back for board review in 2 weeks. And then we would all be aligned. Is that agreeable?
That would be fine.
Is that what you were hoping for,
Yep,
Lance?
yep.
All right.
I don't think we need the whole other 8110. We just have to address it. So, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. All right. Continuing then. 155. Anything about committees? Anything on that? Or 164? 164.1. I'm going to slide down a little bit, Cassie. 164.2, anything? Okay. 165.1, notice of meetings. A lot of these are the bylaws. Most people wouldn't read these. 165.2, change of regular meetings. 171.1, president.
Could you click on that one?
Sure.
This one, there's that line that, and I brought this up at a meeting recently. There's a line there that says that the board president may assume the responsibilities assigned to the clerk. And I did have that WASB seminar the other day that said the board president who is chairing the meeting shouldn't also be the clerk, because you'd be holding two offices at the same time. So I would, I don't think it's worth trying to get a different legal opinion. It makes sense. I would suggest that we change this in some way to just to say the board president may appoint someone to be assigned as the clerk, something like that, as opposed to saying the president would be the clerk,
Okay.
his or herself.
And Cassie, is this the one we talked about a few weeks ago? No, that was a different policy in terms of the reorganization meeting, right? Okay. Okay. So what you're suggesting, Lance? Sorry, I hadn't.
Yeah. So something as simple as the board president may appoint someone else to responsibilities assigned to the clerk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that good, Cassie?
Actually, I take that back. It already says it in there, doesn't it? It says
Assume.
or delegate the clerk's responsibilities to another board member. So yeah, just take out the part that talks about the president doing it.
May assume, correct.
Yeah.
Are good with that? All right. Thank you. Thanks, Lance. It's all right. Double duty. That's why we don't hold two offices. All right. 1260, 1421, 1623, 1630.01. I'm going to pause just for a minute here. Just a reminder for people who are watching or people who aren't as familiar with this process, we get these updates every 6 months from Neola. They employ a team of attorneys that monitor state and federal changes. We get some recommendations administratively. We review these, make recommendations. That then comes to the board. And that's what we're doing now, is just checking to see if the board has any other thoughts on these. So where did I leave off? 1630.01. Okay. 2340, district-sponsored trips. 2521. 3120.07, 3121. One other note, just for people who are watching, if you see the same name on the 3000s and the 4000s, 3000s deal with certified staff, 4000s are with support staff. Oftentimes they are duplicate policies. 3123 or 3139, 3430.01, 4121, 4123, 4139, 4140, 4340.01, 4340.05. I'm going to slide down a little bit. 5113. 5,000s all have to do with students, so this is all student attendance when it says attendance. 5215, 5350, 5505, 5517, 5530, 6116, 6146, 6151, 6610, 7250, 01, 7440, 01 or 02, 7450, 7540.02, 04, 08. That's a new one on artificial intelligence, fairly small. We're going to continue to do some work in the district. A lots of interest. John Uding did a nice survey of staff around their level of interest, level of expertise, level of concern. We got some really nice feedback there. That conversation will continue. 8121, 8146, 8310, 8420, 8500, 8531, 8700, 8913, 9210, and 9211. All right. They keep telling us that this is a small, what's the phrase? This is an unusually large update. They keep telling, but they always seem to have about 50 policies. So, but the good news here is this keeps us up to date. So there's always eyes on them. General questions or suggestions on this, on the policies? Otherwise, we'll bring them back in 2 weeks for those changes for final approval. Excellent. Thank you.
With that, I'm seeking a motion to recommend to the full board the approval of the Neola policies as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. I will share just a couple of things pertaining to the search process that we're in the middle of for our new superintendent. I want to give an update and a thank you to the community. We had over 1,000 people that were involved with the survey, which gave us a heck of a lot of very good information in taking a look at what we're going to be looking at in a superintendent coming July 1st. And also would like to thank all of the people that took part in the focus groups and were willing to give up some time to be a part of that. That was very important. Those focus groups and that survey helped create the situation that we are looking for. I'm talking about who we are looking for within our process, how we're going to follow the process, and how we're moving forward. So we really thank the people that have been a part of this. Initial meeting for the board happened January 22nd, 2024. Community survey took place on Thursday, February 8th. Focus groups took place from February 5 to February 9. Meeting to review the focus group results application and creating questions was on February 15th when the board got together and took a look at what we're going to be doing this evening, identifying the questions for the first round of interviews that will be coming up. Application and brochure posted was on February 22nd. The application deadline is March 15th. So that's basically where we are at this point in time with everything that's moving forward. I would strongly encourage people to take a look at our website, go to the home page on the Wausau School District website, and there it will pop up where you'll be able to identify the things that are happening as we move forward. So that's what and where we are at this point in time. So with that, again, I thank a lot of people for a lot of help throughout this process. At this point in time, I'm seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We're going to very quickly go to calling to order the special meeting that we have for Monday, February 26, 2024, special meeting to come to order at this point in time. First agenda item is, as referendum projects for each facility reach the end of the design phase in 95, we would put this forward to begin with. I'm seeking a motion to approve the plan designs for East High School as presented to be issued for bidding.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, we're taking a look at the presentation that we just heard for Red Granite Charter School, the location for the following year, this next year coming up. I'm seeking a motion to approve Red Granite to reside at Hewitt, Texas Elementary for the 2024-25 and 25-26 school years.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item, I'm going to need a roll call on this. I'm seeking a motion to enter into closed session to discuss first round interview questions for superintendent search, Wisconsin statutes 19.851C.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
John Kreischer.
Yes.
Pat McKee.
Yes.
Cody Nicolai.
Yes.
Jennifer Paoli. Joanna Reyes. Lance Trollope.
Yes.
Karen Vandenberg. Jim Boucher.
Yes. Thank you very much. We'll go into close at this time.